Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. I got Evan, I got Lexie. We got lots to talk about. What's up, guys?
What's up,
man? Long time no see.
It feels good. It was it's good. It was a good weekend. First hometown show.
Yes,
it was. First big show after the Arnold, which I call this kind of like the start of the season.
Same.
Yes, and so, well, today's topic is courtesy of Lexie. So, Lexie, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, we're going to talk about just kind of how to prepare for show day. Not necessarily preparing from like a physique standpoint, right? I feel like we talk a lot about that, but more so, I think like the little odds and ends that go into preparing for your show day. So things such as, okay, how do I pick my show, when to sign up for a show, when to buy my MPC card, when to schedule, the hair, the tan, the makeup, little things just like that, just kind of preparing for your show day. Because I feel like those little things kind of especially stress, I think, first-time competitors out because, like, it's your first time. You don't know when to do things. So we are going to lay it all out for you guys today.
Yeah. And before that, let's go ahead and review the weekend because we had two pretty major bikini shows and lots of, I guess, things to talk about and discuss, especially when we get to see it with our own eyes. I think that helps because pictures, lighting, very deceiving. The naked eye test is really kind of important whenever someone gives me feedback from a show, but they weren't there, I'm like, is that real? So that's why I like to talk to the judges after the shows and ask them, hey, compared to this show, what'd you think? So being there in person, always exciting. And I don't know, I just felt confident. I was very happy with how the girls that I was, fortunate enough to bring to that show were looking. So I was excited about it. And I just wanted to see how it shook out. Last week's podcast, we discussed who the favorites were, which were Marie Eve from Canada, Yulia, who was an Olympian last year, and then our wild card was Allie, and those were the top three.
Yeah.
It was just like we called it, and we say kind of Allie came in good. She would probably win the show, and that's what happened.
Yeah, Allie was second twice last year, so she was knocking on the door of going to the Olympia. And I think she walked into a very favorable lineup. I think it could have gone very differently had the two girls out in California split up. Who knows? You never know. And so the first thing I want to say is how cool I think these new rules are. Do you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the rule about having to have your application and your contract in a week before the show it's huge. I mean, it is absolutely massive. And you can already tell too with some of the shows that are coming out like next week, right? On lineups. It's much better for the athletes. Much better.
Yeah, and actually there's a couple names on next week's list. Let's go over them because I was a little surprised to see them not on the stage this weekend, but they're doing the shows next weekend. So the first one, if you guys follow the sport pretty closely, so next weekend in Charlotte, I'm really, really curious to see what happens because there's a girl from the Arnold, Tamika Carter, who skipped a show in her backyard. She did not do the Klash, and she lives here in Florida, but she's doing the Charlotte. So, strategy be what it be, I'm sure her and her camp have a reason, but when I saw her name on the list, I thought, because I was expecting her to be at Klash.
Yeah.
And she would have probably been the front runner. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting how the strategy plays out early this year.
And it'll be interesting too. So I just pulled up the list. I see that a couple of girls that were in San Diego this past weekend. So Brittany Gillespie, Anya, and
I'm sure Tara.
Kimber, I think. Where did I see her? Yeah, they're all coming over for this as well. So
Tara's got to be on there too. No, I didn't check, but is she on there?
I
I
don't
didn't see her name
see
on there.
any.
No,
No.
she's not on there. Okay, so that immediately means there's no favorite.
Interesting.
There's no one coming into the show with like a ton of momentum.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as well to see the girl that placed fourth this past weekend at Clash and who won the Arnold, Stacy, she's on this list, or not Stacy, Stassi, she's on this list as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that'll be interesting considering, I mean, she got fourth at her pro debut. So
Yeah, when she won the Arnold, she won the Arnold Amateur. Let's
yeah, the
make
Arnold
sure
amateur,
people
I'm
get that.
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, big difference there. But yeah. So this is a neat list. Yeah, and I see Paul, you have Amanda. She's on this list. Is there anybody else you have on this list?
Kate's on the list as well. They wanted her just a little bit tighter in the back pose and the glutes, so we're pushing her. Amanda finished in 8th, so she got first call outs, but they want her fuller. She was, really, really tight. So we're gonna, and the nice thing is there'll be some judges going from Orlando so they'll see her, back to back weekends. That helps.
You
But
know,
yeah, I'd have to, if we're talking Vegas odds, Tamika's got to be the favorite here.
Yeah.
yeah, well, two other names I see on the list that could potentially, I mean, it's their first show of the season. We'll see, but they've been front runners in past seasons would be Maya and Maria Acosta. They're both
Maria Acosta actually got second at this show last year. I was there. And Maya was top 5 a couple times last year. And she's another one of those with a great muscle, great shape, really pretty girl. When she puts it all together, it's hard to pick her apart. Brittany Gillespie, I was a little surprised to see her not in that top 5 or 6 last week. I don't know where she finished, but she wasn't in that top group. I'm mistaken but I'm pretty sure I saw the picture and I don't remember seeing her in it. So we'll see if she makes some adjustments.
Yeah.
Ashley Hampton. So if you guys aren't familiar with Ashley Hampton, you should be. She missed the Olympia last year, like at a bunch of shows. She was like 2nd or 3rd.
I'm
And
not
I'm
familiar
sorry
with her.
if I don't know everybody else, but Jessica Miller. Jessica Miller's from my area.
Oh
Miss Fit
yeah.
Miller.
I know.
She always was
She's
good.
got all the tools. She's got the muscle, the balance, the beauty. Like she's got the whole, the look.
She's a whole
So,
package. Yeah.
I'm actually really excited. I feel like this list, I feel like there's no one that's like, all right, they're absolutely going to win it, but there's a lot of names that have done really well in the past who have gotten really, really close. So I think this is an exciting list.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot of
think-
good competitors, but no front runners.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Tamika
Other
is
Tamika.
the only
Tamika, yeah.
Olympian that I see. I don't see another Olympian. So that's, that's a feather in your cap, but it's also a target on your back. So,
It is.
but I'm sure
Right.
Tamika's, I mean, insane. I mean, structure, muscle, fullness, insertions. With her, it's always a question of, does she come in too hard? Does she come in full enough? She's got one of those physiques that, she can change drastically. I remember last year at Tampa, she was outside of that first call out, but she looked insane. And then a few weeks later, we saw her in Texas and she was fighting for the top 3 and then she won right after that. So yeah.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is she the one that actually won the Arnold Amateur 2 years ago?
No.
No. Oh no,
She's been
that's
around for a while.
Never mind. Yep, I'm getting okay. No, I know who we're talking about. I always get them confused.
Actually, yeah, where is she at?
That's Rhoda.
Rhoda Alley. Yeah, I'm surprised because she looked really good at the Arnold. I'm surprised she hasn't jumped into another show. But again, strategy, maybe, I think she's Canadian, so maybe she's sticking to Canada. Who knows? This is where it gets fun, guys, because before when we would see these lists, we would be like, yeah, but we'll see what happens on show day. Now this is the list. It's kind of cool. Like,
I
think a lot of girls would see this list and go, there's only one Olympian. It's Tamika. I feel confident I can go there. And no, now we get to see all these girls are going into a show with like confidence that they can do. It's exciting.
I know.
I think also something this does as well is I think it stops people from trophy hunting as well. As far as people will just, if they win a show, right? Like let's say Amy won the show last weekend and she'll just keep doing more shows. And most people would pick shows that are advantageous to them based on a list to continue winning because you don't want to win a show and immediately go next week and not win the show. That's not good for your momentum. So I think that's going to cut down, honestly, on the amount of shows that some of these competitors do in the long run.
I guess it all comes down to your motivations, like I feel like Ashley Kaltwasser is not really trophy hunting, but she said she wants to get to 50 pro wins. So at some point she's going to be jumping into
Yeah.
shows. And I
Yeah.
don't think
She's a little bit different because
she doesn't
she'll
give
just
a
do whatever
damn
show.
who's at the shows
No, she doesn't care.
going. And I think Amy is of the same cloth. Like she's already announced this, someone mentioned to me that she announced she's doing Wasatch and Pittsburgh. And I'm like, cool. So I'll have Brittany and Wasatch and I'll have Ari at Pittsburgh. I like it. I like having somebody that's currently placing higher than my girls because, that's how you make a name for yourself in the sport. You beat someone like that and everyone starts to notice you. If Amy
Yeah.
wins, it's another win and everyone goes, okay, she was supposed to win. If you beat someone like that, that's when everyone goes, hold up.
Hey guys, Coach Lexie here, and I am here to take a moment to recognize one of our podcast sponsors, Cure Nutrition, and more specifically, I want to talk about their product, Aura. That is A-U-R-A. I have personally been taking Aura for the past several months, and I absolutely love it. Aura is Cure Nutrition's gut health and immunity supplement, and it has ingredients such as turkey tail, chaga, licorice root, ginger, turmeric, vitamin D, and zinc. So it is a really great supplement to just add into your daily regimen for a little bit of a boost in immunity and gut health. So if you are interested in trying this product or any of the other products on Cure Nutrition's website, be sure to use the code, all one word, for a discount. Now back to the show.
And also
Correct.
too, I've always wondered, I'm going to get your opinion on this, Paul. When you have like a big front runner, say like Amy or Ashley or someone like that, and they're going to be in the show and they're going to be the favorite to win the show, and you have an athlete that's quite good, but probably not quite to that level, but similar structurally. Do you think it's advantageous for them to be in that show, to be able to be possibly compared and see how they stack up, and then in future shows they get better looks?
So 100%. So I think one of the main reasons Ari was in first callouts at the Olympia is because our strategy last year, which was we got her qualified. The next weekend we did a show, didn't have to, and Issa was there. And we stood side by side with Issa. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, this is a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. Right. Yeah. And so that immediately puts in the judge's head, okay, this girl can stand next to Miss Bikini Olympia and hold her own. We might need to see her at some bigger, so absolutely. I think I say this to my girls all the time. Sometimes winning is second or third place, because if you've got Ashley or if you've got, a top 10 Olympian there and you're the person standing next to them, everyone all of a sudden goes, who's that? They already know who Ashley K is. We all know who Amy is. But, if there's a girl that no one's ever heard of, maybe last year, I got a lot of text messages at Tampa. Last year when Ari got moved to the center, moved inside of India Paulino, moved inside of all these Olympia girls, and was stood next to Ashlyn, I got a lot of text messages. That was the first time people noticed her. And it was because she was next to Ashlyn, right? So even though Ashlyn won, that was not news for that part of the sport, but it was definitely like, wait, who's the girl standing next to Ashlyn? Let's look her up. And I'm sure, I remember talking to Ari on like Monday, and she's like, yeah, I've added like 3,000 followers on Instagram. She had like 500 going into that. She didn't even have an account before. So it can be really good for you to get noticed. But ultimately, the way my strategy works with competitors is get the feedback you need to get and get off the stage. I don't want my girls doing a bunch of shows. I don't want them getting run down. Listen, yeah, it's awesome to see somebody compete. But there is a price to pay for being stage lean.
Yeah.
There's a price to pay.
There is.
In my mind, once you're established, and the judges are very clear on this. They don't care how many shows you do. They don't care. They care what's up on stage the day of the show. So, they're not, the Olympia is not judged based on how many shows you won. It's based on who's standing next to you and who looks better.
Yeah. And I think like Sandy said this when we interviewed her on the podcast, the judges know when you progressively get worse, like if you keep competing and let's say you're just not showing up at your best, like they do notice and they do pick up on that. So
yeah. And they also don't want that to be reflected in the sport. They don't want someone that wins that doesn't set a good example. So yeah, I think it's early in the season. The Olympia's early this year. And I think a lot of girls are going to get caught not qualifying because they're waiting to compete. This is the time. Like, I'll be honest, like I was very underwhelmed this weekend If you just look at the open, if you took the masters out of that show, the conditioning and the overall look was very underwhelming from head to toe. Versus when we were at the Arnold Lexie, those girls all brought their A game. Every single girl at the Arnold looked phenomenal in Ohio.
Yeah, it was like comparing apples to apples. Whereas I don't want to say Klash was like the opposite, but very,
I will.
that caliber of, I guess.
I don't
like,
think anybody was completely on.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
There was some girls that had better shape, better conditioning, better fullness, better but no one was like
no one was on.
completely on at the Klash. And
I feel like that part of it is just I feel like we generally see that earlier on in the season, even with like amateurs. Like I felt like this show, this Klash show was pretty small from an amateur standpoint too.
Yeah,
I think when looking at the Klash from this weekend, it's if you took the masters out of it, there were some masters people that were in very good condition, right? Very good condition.
Well, even Sandy said this to me after the show when I went for feedback. She said I was more impressed with the masters than the open.
The open was, I'll be dead honest, everyone was soft.
Yeah,
I think so. I think everyone was far too soft at this show, especially comparing about what they rewarded at the Arnold. Right now, granted, you can only judge what's in front of you, but there was nobody that was really, really on. The only person I would say that was really on in the first call-outs as far as conditioning was Amanda, but she needed to be fuller. But other than that, there was nobody that was really just dialed in on the conditioning side of things.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, like these are high-level pros, right? So they all have great shape. They all have great muscle insertions. They all have these things. And when we're talking about this, we're not saying they didn't look good. We're comparing them against the best because that's what we're supposed to do with this.
Yeah, and, again, I even talked to the judges after the show because I wanted to be like, is my brain seeing what your brain is seeing? And I asked about the Arnold this, and they wholeheartedly agreed. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. Now, I didn't get to go to San Diego to see, but obviously the top two competitors this weekend were in San Diego.
And I can imagine their conditioning was probably pretty spot on.
From what I could see, it looked like Amy looked considerably tighter than she was at the Arnold. I saw more detail in her hip. Again, lighting, the naked eye test, I wasn't there, but, and then the girl that got second looked really good too. I thought she looked really sharp. So, it would have been interesting, if you throw all the open competitors into one show, what does it look like then, but, there are going to be those weekends where there's only one show and it gets a little more densely packed.
Yep. It was a fun weekend.
Lesson for you new pros. Lesson for you new pros. When there's two shows or even three shows on one weekend, get your ass on stage because it's going to thin those call outs and you're going to be able to get, noticed.
Yeah.
And a lot of the sport guys, and I know, Paul, you were talking about how the judges don't care how many shows you do. They just want to compare what's up there. Everyone at the high level is damn good. Everyone has great structure. Everyone has great insertions. Everyone has great everything with that. And being strategic on where you compete and being seen, not all the time, but you do need to get your name out there. You do need to be able to, when they walk on stage, be like, oh, yes, and immediately jump off the page and the judges know exactly who you are. Not just one or two judges, but a lot of the judges. That is going to help your stock, not because it's played favoritism, but because when you get in a lineup and everyone is good and you are literally like splitting hairs with this, at the subconscious level, I cannot think it doesn't play a role when they look at it and say, this person has improved.
Especially when they just saw you and they asked you to do something and you do it.
Yes, you improve. Yep.
Yeah.
Like Ari last year at Hurricane, she took second to Jordan. And Bill, who was the head judge, was like, Paul, it's really close. I just want to see her a little bit tighter. So me and Ari went into the fucking murder mode and we're like, okay, like we got 2 weeks. And at the Olympia, we leapfrogged everybody. Right. So based on what happened there, you wouldn't think that she was going to be seventh in the world. But we got the feedback and it kind of, honestly, getting second 2 weeks out might have been a good thing.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You were talking earlier about how, sometimes seconds and thirds and fourths are wins. And that is a prime example.
Well, Daraja 2 years ago, we got second a week before the Olympia. We had 6 days. We literally, the night after the night of the show, we were doing cardio. The next morning we were doing cardio. Like literally for the next 3 or 4 days, we just went into a cave dropped 2 more pounds, and at the Olympia moved and leapfrogged the girl that beat her, you know? So like these competitors are so good, and these judges are so good. They know what they want to see. And if they see it, especially if they just saw you, you know, it does play a role for sure. Judges are
Yeah.
human beings.
And you take feedback, right? So let's say Ari would have won that show, and Bill was like, "Oh, she looked great. Like, you know, just bring her in like this." And then she goes
Yeah.
in like that, and she wouldn't have placed as well in the Olympia. So the
Right.
fact she got second, when in murder mode, came back tighter and probably leapfrog a bunch of people at Olympia. So it's, you know, it's
I think the sport is really
there's a
fun.
lot.
Like especially bikini, because I feel like it's fun in the sense of nobody is ever quote unquote like safe. You know, just because you win one show doesn't mean that you're going to go to the next show and win over the people you won at the show prior. Like you
Right.
see it all the time. Like, you know, Ari got second at Hurricane to Jordan, and then goes to the Olympia and surpasses Jordan in that lineup. So it's just very interesting how the placings.
Listen, and it's, you know, as painful as it can be as a coach, because, you know, I've gotten kicked in the nuts a few times. It makes me love the sport more when I see it happen, because the last thing you want the show to be judged on is the names before the show even starts.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the last thing you want. So it's always encouraging. And, you know, that's why I like to stay after and talk to the judges, because, you know, they're going to tell you their reasons, and then you can get in their heads and make your changes. And, you know, it helps as a coach. And that's why I always feel so confident with my NPC competitors, because I feel like I have an advantage. I'm treating my NPC competitors like they're going to the Olympia. Like we're paying attention to every little detail. And then, you know, the NPC is way different than the pro stage. Just, you know, the overall winner from the NPC show, yeah, she'll be a pro this year, I'm sure, but she's not cracking top call outs at this show, right? Like what I'm saying, like, so like, it's much more fun in the NPC with regards to, like, if you show up, you're gonna get noticed. Whereas in the pros, if you show up, you might get ignored. Just depends on who's there.
Right.
All right.
Yes.
So I think, yeah, that wraps up that. Congrats to Allie going to the Olympia. Congrats to, actually, yeah, that was Amy's qualification, because she was not qualified prior to that.
True. You're right.
So,
Yeah.
so two new people added to the Olympia roster. And I think it'll be, you know, I heard Amy's doing Wasatch and Pittsburgh.
I think she is. I think I have seen that.
Yeah.
She's said that
I think she won Wasatch last year, so that's probably a comfortable
did.
show for her. I love Salt Lake City, and I'm excited because I got Brittany going, and I love getting next to top competitors, because if you don't win, you get to figure out what you got to do to win. It's like, you know,
Brittany's
it's fun.
look really amazing. I mean, she looks awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is the best she's ever looked, hands down. She brought her legs up, brought her shoulders down. We are in perfect balance, and we're fitting the criteria better than ever. So it's just going to be a matter of, like, you know, seeing how the season unfolds. And she seems to be a mentally stronger person this year. You know, she's in a good place, so I'm excited for her. But let's get into the topic at hand, which is like the final stages of prep. Let's make sure that we're handling things for show day. And I think show day starts at least a little ways out from stage. Like preparing yourself for show day starts a little ways out. So why don't you start us off?
I think it's different for everybody, because I mean, this is, you know, some people just jump into shows last minute, right? I've definitely done that, but I think we'll talk, if we'll talk in the standpoint of like, if you know your show ahead of time, right? So I guess the first thing we can kind of dive into is when to sign up for your show. Because I feel like this is something I think a lot of times, like, newer competitors think, oh, I'm going to sign up for my show like 12 weeks out, right? And I don't know about you guys, but I never have my girls sign up until maybe we're like 2 weeks out, right? Because there's not a late fee until like
Promoters are not going to want to hear that, Lexie.
Oh, well, I didn't mean to like bash it that way, but okay. I typically
listen, I don't disagree with you.
No.
I don't, 12 weeks out's probably a little early, but I would say, like, if you're confident 4 weeks out, go ahead and sign up.
Yeah, 4 weeks out is probably fine. Yeah, but the reason my rationale behind that, and I think you guys will probably back me up on this, is I've had instances with clients where something comes up in their life where, like, for example, I had a girl last year, something happened, like her boyfriend had an accident, he was in the hospital, and she had to go tend to that, right? Like, there are those uncontrollable things that, God forbid, that hopefully they don't happen, but sometimes they just do. And you may have to push out your show date, right? And that's not ever anything you can really, guess is going to happen. So that's why I typically say, don't sign up too far in advance. I mean, if you sign up far in advance and you don't end up doing the show, it's not like it's the end of the world. You're just going to be probably out a little bit of money. So that's why I typically say don't sign up for the show when you are like at the very beginning of your prep. Typically, I recommend like maybe around that 4 to 6 week out mark, start talking to your coach, say, hey, are we on track? Am I good to sign up for the show? And then proceed as follows.
Yeah, that's a big thing with that is look, if you want to book your hotels and everything early, feel free to go ahead and do that because you can always cancel those. I think that registering too early, especially for newer competitors, is a massive stress, a massive contribution to stress. And honestly, if it's the first time you competed, you don't know how long it's going to take to get you in shape. You don't. And your coach doesn't know how long it takes you in shape. Unless you have gone through multiple dieting phases with a coach, they don't know. They don't know. And signing up too early just causes undue stress. You don't get a discount for signing up 3 months early. So wait until you know that you're going to be ready and then sign up for the show. And that goes the same for your tanning, your hair, your makeup, all that.
Yeah, I think like with makeup, I have gotten some girls that they're a little worried, like, oh my, because I know some makeup artists, they do fill up pretty quickly, especially
Yeah.
people like Joey. She's her own person, right? Like it is only just one of her, so she can only take so many people. So she's gonna fill up a lot quicker than like somebody like V, the makeup artist, has a whole team, right? But I think so there is that side of things that you have to consider. But most of the time, like I can confidently say I've chosen to do a show, like I don't recommend this, but I've chosen to do a show the week before and I ended up scheduling everything and it wasn't ideal, but you can make it happen if it has to come down to it. But yeah, the
Mhm.
makeup and the hair isn't something you have to really schedule and book like 10 plus weeks out at all.
And I'm talking for the people that for some of these shows, you have to register for the show to be able to register for the show hair and makeup through the
Oh,
promotion of the site.
if you're
If
doing
it's
the
the one
you're
sponsored
doing
by the show.
the shows,
And
yeah.
let's be honest, guys, 95% of the people or 90% of the people listen to this show don't know that there's other makeup artists that come. They just know the people that the show provides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listen, honestly, some of those are great. Like LeBeau, she's usually one of the title. She works with the host company and she's fantastic. But if you want to get one of like the kind of like premier not show people like Joey or V, you got to reach out to their team. And I don't know if Carolyn's still doing makeup, but she was always one of my favorites too. And if there are new makeup artists out there, send me a direct message. Send me your work. I would love to promote you, but I can only go by what I see. And so, if you hear me say the same names over and over, that's because I put my girls in their chair, they get up on stage, and I'm like, boom, nailed it.
Paul, that's a great idea. Like anyone who wants to message us and let us know what shows you're
Yeah.
going to be at and a copy of work, that would be great because we all have a lot of competitors competing this year, and to give them
Always.
options is huge. So
Yeah.
we are
And
more than happy to help.
V is the most consistent, and she's also the one that has a team, right? So
Mhm.
if you reach out to her and you don't get her, you're going to get, one of her girls named Taylor is fantastic as well. And I'm sure there's more, not knocking anybody, but V is overseeing the work that they're doing. Whereas like you said, Joey, she's amazing, but she's got what, 8-10 spots for a show because they get up at 3. They stop working when the show starts. So, basically
Right.
they're getting all their work in before the show starts. I always laugh that like the makeup artists and me have opposite schedules. Their their day is over when the show starts. Mine's just starting.
Yep.
I know. I always laugh going in to get my makeup. Like I always do my makeup with V, and like you go in, she's got music going, and it's like
Yeah.
I'll go in at like 5 or 6, and she's like, oh, I've been up since 2:45, 3. I mean,
Yeah.
there were some times where, because she lives on the West Coast, she'll fly over and like not even get to go to bed before starting makeup. So yeah, it is funny how their schedule works for sure. Yeah. So, and same with like tan, when it comes to scheduling your makeup and your hair, same with scheduling the tan. I think it kind of generally follows the same like rule of thumb when it comes to when you sign up for your show. You generally, once you enroll for the show, then you just sign up for the tan through the host tanning company, through the show. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Every show is going to have a host tanning company, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, where do I find, you know, a tanning company? There is the DIY option, right? So there is always that tan option, but I would typically say for a first-time competitor, I would probably not do the DIY tan for your first show. That may be something that maybe you experiment with later down the line if you think that that could work for you. But I would say if it's your first show, just go with the host tanner just to eliminate stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend most people do the host tanner anyways, because that's what the vast majority of people are going to be doing, and you want your tan to be somewhat similar to what everyone else's looks like up there.
Yeah.
So I'll give my 2 cents on tanning, because I think some people rely too much on the tanning process.
Yeah.
The best tan I've ever had, I got a tan in a tanning bed, not to the point where I was like leather, but I got for men especially, we don't tan our bodies. We don't walk around in bikinis. So if you're doing a division like classic or bodybuilding where you're showing, I'm obsessed with like perfecting my stage look. So I went to the tanning bed for 1 month, got a 1 month membership, cost me $30, whatever. Just went like every other day. That's the easiest tan has ever looked. Now I am a darker skinned, you know, when I tan, I get very dark. I'm Italian, but it just gives you that first layer. If you are ghost white and you're going to your first tanning appointment Friday night, I am sorry. There is zero chance. Very rarely do you find someone that can actually take that first coat of tan, go to bed, wake up, do the second coat of tan and bronzer and be stage ready. If that's you, buy a DIY kit, start applying it Tuesday night, sleep in it, rinse. Wednesday night, sleep in it, rinse. The nice thing about DIY and rinsing is it kind of starts to absorb into the skin. You don't get the caked on look that if you try to do 3 or 4 layers, you do. It absorbs. So by the time you get sprayed on Friday, you've rinsed a couple times. Your skin is already a couple shades darker. And when they spray that coat on there, man, it goes on so nice. So
I think that is a great point. Yeah, and I actually, this was something I always wondered myself, and I have an answer now because I did it at the Tampa Pro, but I always wondered, okay, so if you do the DIY, like the Pro Tan DIY kit, and let's say you're just using it for like those base layers a week before, right? I've always wondered, okay, well, if you take Pro Tan and let's say the host tan is liquid sun rays, different brand, you know, they have different formulas, right? I've always wondered how those two would mix, right? So I've always kind of been worried about that, but this past year when I did the Tampa Pro, I was going to try to do the DIY, but I last minute was like, oh, I am not going to be dark enough. So I had already applied the DIY base coats, and the liquid sun rays was the host tanner, and they tanned me. And I was worried. I asked them, I said, hey, like I've already used some like Pro Tan. Is this going to mix badly? And they're like, no, it won't be an issue. And it really didn't end up being an issue. So that if anybody else out there has that question, you can essentially do the Pro Tan like base coat the week before. And if the host tan is liquid sun rays, it shouldn't really interfere, you know, because you're mixing brands.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak out for every host tanning company, but I know I have done some, and this is something, if any of my athletes, I know I have a fair amount of my athletes that listen to this, and if we've done shows together, you know that we have a process for tanning to where I have a document I send out, because I like everyone to do base coats before we go into the show. And every once in a while, I'll get feedback of people saying the opposite. Like, see, they're saying, oh, well, you can't do this. It's going to mix weird. I'm like, no, it won't. You're just talking to somebody there that's upset that you didn't buy 4 coats from them.
Right.
Like, don't worry about it. Now, one thing I will recommend, guys, is or females too, is put some like Vaseline over your toenails before you do your feet, or kind of blend it into your feet a little bit, and don't worry about getting your feet quite as much, because then that can start to look really, really spotchy around your feet. I think just blending it down kind of into your ankles and leaving it there, more so than trying to do your feet in your hands, is probably going to be
all right,
the better
Evan. I
route
can
to
do you one better. I can do you. So this is a ritual for me. I do this every time I compete. I pamper myself. I go on Thursday and I get a mani-pedi and I do clear nail polish.
Oh,
There you go.
I love it.
First of all, for all my men out there that don't do mani-pedis because they're, you know, a girl thing, there's nothing like having someone massage your forearms and your calves and like primp your feet and hands. Like, it feels so damn good.
I just don't know if I'd want to be the nail artist who's giving a guy a pedicure, because I don't know. I feel like guys, their feet are sometimes just,
Lexi, they got to
I
bring in a
don't
team
know.
for me. They got to bring in like 2 or 3 per foot.
I
I feel bad. They need hazard pay for me. Yeah.
I have beautiful feet. I could be a foot model. I'm not gonna lie.
gosh, that's
I got
hilarious.
beautiful toes, great balance. My toenails are nice.
Good
Not too
insertions.
no hair. I got nice feet. It's just a fact. My wife gets mad at me, and I think it's because I wear socks. Women have these banged up toes, and it's because they wear around, these women's shoes, and their feet are all crimped all week.
Mhm.
Nah, my feet are
Yeah.
comfy in sandals and socks.
That's it, baby.
But at the same time.
It's a foot hack. Wear socks.
But yeah, so like getting clear nail polish will clear that problem right up. It just wipes the tan right off. It doesn't stick to the polish. So that was, I don't know, someone told me that my first show, and I did it, and I was so glad because everyone backstage had like these stained nails. Yeah. So
Another thing too is I know I did this one time and it wasn't a huge issue, but if you're doing the DIY or like you're just applying a base coat, wear the gloves, because one time I didn't, and then the palm of my hand got really dark because the tan pools in your hand.
Yes.
And if you're posing on stage, I mean, that could potentially be kind of distracting depending on if that tan really gets your hands dark. So just wear the gloves. I think every DIY tan kit comes with like the gloves, but if it doesn't, buy a pair, put them on when you're applying the tan. That way you don't have that tan pooling in the palm of your hand, because that just looks weird.
it does not come off. You're
No.
not washing it off. Sorry.
Oh no. And I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but I do think it's worth mentioning. Exfoliating. I think this is actually super, super important, because a lot of us, probably every one of us, we have dry skin, and a lot of times you can't see it until they apply that really dark tan. But if you have dry skin and they apply the dark tan, that dry skin, like the patches of dry skin, will look a little bit like different in shade of color. So it's really
Oh, did you notice Yulia this weekend? She had
Yeah.
like streaks on her leg. I talked to her after prejudging. She got a sunburn at the beach, and and it was like
that
3
was
weeks ago.
Yeah.
wow.
You can't,
3
don't want to get
weeks ago.
sunburned.
I thought that was honestly, so for those of you guys listening, I noticed it was her back pose, like on her glute. It looked like her tan had just gotten smudged, but okay, that's interesting. Well, that's another point. I know I brought it up on the podcast before, and I always tell my girls, like, especially, I think it's really relevant to talk about right now as we go into the warmer summer months. If you are prepping in the middle of summer, I mean, yes, you can still, I think, be out in the sun, but you need to be very careful about getting sunline or suntan lines. And if you're going to lay out in the sun, I would highly recommend ordering a posing suit from a suit company. That way it mimics the coverage of your stage suit. Because yeah, that's interesting. So Yulia's burn was 3 weeks old and it still showed. Wow.
I mean, we could honestly just make this whole thing over just like the tanning process before going to a show, to be honest with you,
totally
because
could.
there's so many things about this, like you could go into as
Well,
far
but
as
I don't want to,
bathing.
I don't want to overcomplicate it, stress people out.
No.
If you didn't do all this stuff, keep it
No.
simple. Don't get a sunburn. Do a couple DIY coats. It doesn't cost nothing compared to getting a spray tan.
And
You know,
what I would recommend as well is be careful weeks leading up to it, because if you have an animal, a cat, a dog that likes to jump on you, and you get these little scratches on you, that is going to be amplified by that tan by about 100% on there. So
Yeah.
these little bitty lines you see, it's like, oh, my cute little dog likes to just jump up and say hi. If you got those tiny little scratches on your legs, it will definitely show up, because anything that's a different pigmentation will get darker.
Yeah.
With that. So you will see people that look like they've been in a knife fight. And it's because their dog was excited to see them.
Yes. Great
I
points.
mean,
Great points. Okay. Let's touch on. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I got one that I think a lot of people fall into with that is make sure, like if you're staying at a host hotel, make sure you bring water with you. Don't try to find water when you get there. Like just bring a couple jugs of water, bring more than you think you're going to need. And I can promise you that is going to get rid of some anxiety. Now, if you have a coach that just completely cuts your water out, then that's a completely different story with that. But this is 2024, not 1999, and people drink water these days. And with that, just make sure you bring it with you. It will cut down on a ton of anxiety, especially when you're depleted and you're tired and trying to go to a store and find stuff, and gallons of water or on the heavier side of things. So just bring and pack that with you.
That's a really great point, and that makes me think, because I was gonna say, there's always, we live in a day and age where you can get to the hotel and do like Instacart, but I think that you are right, Evan. Always bring as much as you can just to eliminate anxiety. But I think it's also worth mentioning, if you are competing in a show and you rely on, okay, I'm going to get to the venue and then I'm going to go to the store and get a lot of my food. I have seen instances where like the local grocery store runs out of bodybuilding staples such as like rice cakes, egg whites. So I've seen those examples of like, you go to the show venue and or the hotel and you get there and you're going to try to go to the grocery store nearby to get, the extra food that you need. And because so many other bodybuilders have done the same thing, they run out of like those bodybuilding staples. So yeah, I think it's always smart, if you are traveling for a show, bring as much of your food as you can. And then, if you do need to go to the store, it shouldn't be for like the bulk of your items, just because I've seen it before where local grocery stores do run dry of the bodybuilding staples. And then what are you going to do, and when they don't have what you need? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually got water for Amanda from CVS. The one thing nice about, shows in cities with lots of stuff is you got access to things if you need them.
Yeah, Orlando is nice for that for sure. I think another thing to briefly talk about, not that it will take long at all, but just for like competitors, whether you're a first-time competitor or if it's your first time competing in the year, it is important to remember that you do need to get your NPC card ahead. Well, you don't always have to get it ahead of time. They typically do allow you to purchase it at most shows, but again, save the stress, buy it ahead of time,
It's
and then
digital now. It makes the check-in so easy. You just hold up your card.
yeah, so when you buy it, I always say like take a screenshot of it on your phone, because they will ask for it when you are checking in at the athlete check-ins. So it's nice to have it like readily available on your
Oh,
phone.
and also, dear coaches, if you want a backstage pass, you must have an NPC current active card. So pay for your NPC card when you start the season. When you go to shows, if you try to purchase a coach's pass, they're going to want to see it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, good to know. I still see some people every once in a while. I always laugh. I still see some people like printing their cards out too and like taking them out to athlete check-ins. I'm like,
I save it on my phone and just save it in
Yeah.
like a separate
Yeah.
folder. I have every year.
I have heard from a few people, and it's funny you brought that up, Lexi, is I've heard from a few people, especially in like the NPC Northeast, that they still would require a physical printout of the card. I've heard that. I
Well,
don't
I
know. I
had to
haven't seen
show
it.
when I went to the Northeast, I had to show my ID
Okay.
because
Um,
obviously you could just take a picture of anyone's card and show it. So I had to show my card with my ID, and that was good enough.
that makes sense. One thing I also want to bring up that's really, really important here is if you're an NPC competitor, go to the pre-show meeting on show day
Mm-hmm.
and be backstage. Don't listen to other coaches or anything saying, "Oh, you have 3 hours. You don't have to be back until this time." Go there, and whoever the expediter is, look. I'll be honest. Some expediters are nicer than others, right? If you're lucky enough to be in Florida, I have never had a bad experience with any expediters down here. Everyone is awesome. Shout out to my boy Bill.
I learned
Everyone is awesome. Ask them questions. Say, "Hey, how long do you think we go on?" If they tell you, "I don't know," fine. 30 minutes goes by, ask them again. It's fine. It's fine. You do not want to miss your class. You don't want to miss your class. And if you want headphones in, sit with your headphones in. Turn off the noise cancellation on them if you have noise cancellation headphones so you can hear what's going on around you, please. And please be present. Don't be that person that you're number 132 and everyone's walking around. Where's 132 at? And you're in the corner like twiddling your thumbs. Do not be that person, please.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because some shows just notoriously run a lot faster than others, but it's like you don't know until the show actually starts. So I would just say be there at the beginning of prejudging, just even if you have to be backstage for hours and hours. I know it's, that's not fun, but bring a blanket, bring a yoga mat, pack your, or, camp out backstage. You would much rather be back there for 3 hours rather than not
Yeah.
get there in time and miss your class. Like that
If
would be
it's a
all.
national show, it's a national show completely different. Those run super, super long, and half those times they got a live stream. You could watch it anyways, right?
Yeah.
So you're
Well, I
good with
think
that.
all of the national shows now have that muscle wear app that'll
Mhm.
actually text you when to be backstage. Those are helpful. But yeah, the live streams are great. The other thing is traveling to a show, right? So check-ins are always Friday evenings for most NPC show, 99%. So some people will be like, well, I'll just get to town Friday. Listen, if you're more than 2 hours away, get there Thursday. Get a hotel, sleep in, enjoy your Friday. If your Friday is fighting traffic, wondering if you're going to make it to check-ins, wonder if you're going to make it to your training appointment, then you got to go check in, then your coach wants you to pose, then you got to go get a workout in, whatever it is. If you are behind schedule on Friday, your stress is going to be high. It's a completely different experience than if you just wake up, stretch, get out of bed, enjoy your day. Spend the extra money if you're more than 2 hours away and get to town early.
Because here's the thing too, guys, is a lot of hotel check-ins at like 4 p.m. and a lot of check-ins for the show are 5 p.m. So if you get there early on in the day to try to relax, you're not going to have anywhere to put your stuff either, the vast majority of time. So if you have the extra money, definitely get the hotel room for the night before.
Some of these
recommend.
hotels, the check-ins are an hour, like the Avanti, which the Klash was at. You got to remember, it's not just the competitors checking in. It's everyone that's going to Disney the next day. So there's a line out the door just to get your hotel room. So now you're stressing about getting your room, your food's in the cooler, you got to put it in the fridge. Like these little things add up. And I'm telling you, if you're there on Thursday, it is just such a different experience to just wake up and literally have nothing to do for 4 hours. It's just a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially if you're flying, even with direct flights, but especially if you're flying and you have multiple flights, if you're flying in the day before, that could be really stressful with just flight delays, right? And that's just unnecessary stress that you don't need. And another thing,
Kate dropped 4 pounds by staying in a hotel Thursday. She got away from her family. She got away from like her work.
I heard you say that before, like
and I like did a double take on Friday. I was like, you dropped 4 pounds? She's like, I know. I was like, all right, I got to see you because you're probably flat. She was a little bit, but at the same time, just all that whoosh of like de-stressing in a hotel room is super valuable.
Yes.
It's huge. It's huge, guys. And here's a good one too. And this is, it's common sense for people that have competed for a while, but not for newer competitors. With that is de-stress yourself as much as possible on the night before the show and the days leading into the show with that, and try to get sleep. Everyone has excuses about why they can't sleep, but you've done cardio, you've done the work, you've done the diet, you've done all this. This part is just as important, if not more important than that. I had a conversation today with a guy that I have competing this weekend, and his steps get up there like way too high, like minimum 20,000. I'm like, you got to cut this back. He's like, well, I just forget about it. I'm like, I don't know what to respond to that. I just forget about it. Like, I don't know how to, you've killed yourself on cardio, you've killed yourself in your diet, you've killed yourself in your training, all this for 16 weeks, and you forget about the steps that you walk.
1,000 is a lot. It's not like you would have to be intentional to get that in.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. He's like, well, I just forget. I'm like, well, stop forgetting about it. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, there are certain things that really matter towards the end, and you want to get, especially if you're in shape, guys, like your body needs to rest some. If not, it's going to hold on to inflammation. I can tell you the look on stage for somebody that is stressed, and I could be the key answer to this or example of this. When I did my pro debut, I had a lot of stress going on in my life. And Nick Walker's coach at the time, looked at me after, and he goes, you looked really good. He's like, your body just looked tired. I'm like, that's exactly what it looks like. Stressed. And I wasn't tired. It was stressed. So make sure you rest, make sure that you sleep, and whatever you need to do that, please do it, and realize it is just as important as the water and the food and the cardio and the diet and the training and all of it. All of it. Don't screw it up at the end because you feel like you just need to push harder for some reason.
Yeah, and I think if you have the opportunity to do so, taking a little bit of time off of work later in the week just to have a couple days to rest, reset, be a diva.
Get your mani-pedi. You got to get that mani-pedi.
I feel like those people who work up until the last day are usually really stressed about, okay, I still gotta do this. I gotta do this.
Cheryl, Cheryl Sweeney went to work after prejudging at a show. She's like, I'm gonna go to my office and work. I was like, Cheryl. That's not.
Oh my gosh.
That
Was
sounds like something she would do.
but for her, that's normal. But yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely try to. I always tell my athletes, be a diva for 72 hours. Just be a diva. It's about you. It's about going to bed when you want to go to bed. It's about you eating when you want to eat. It's about you, for those 72 hours. If you have kids, if you have a husband, if you have a significant other, if you have friends and family in town, tell them after the show is over, I'm yours. But until then, I'm on my schedule. And they're going to understand.
Yeah.
They want you to do the best.
And think about this too, guys, is you don't know it until you try it. All right. Some people, like I have some clients that never want to be off plan, right? That just helps them mentally. So they say it does, but they also haven't ever really given them a chance not to be. And that's the way it is with this. Some people can't disconnect from their work because they realize it's going to be far too stressful when they get back to it. The case in point with this is I had the Holiday Classic show that I did, Paul, I did it like really last second. I didn't do anything special for that show at all. And I looked pretty good there. And I tried. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take my calls on this Saturday like I normally would. And I was standing in line taking my my customer service calls because I was a sales rep at the time, and standing about to go backstage taking a phone call because I knew if I didn't take that phone call, it was going to be in the back of my mind and I was going to be worried about it. But I've also done it the other way too. So do what's best for you. But before you set yourself in stone saying this is the way that I need to do things, give it a try and
Yeah.
see if it helps.
Yeah.
Because you may surprise yourself. Because I'm
Yeah.
one of those people that thought I can't talk to anybody. I have to be 100% locked in on this. And when I relaxed that and kind of just did more normal things, it worked better for me in that case because it got my mind off worrying about how it was going to look. But it's different for everyone. And so give it a try.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've done both too, where usually I try to like have my Friday check-in people check in the day before. That way I don't have any check-ins I really have to tend to. But yeah, I've done it both ways where I've worked the day before and I haven't. And you just kind of have to find, I guess, what works for you. Because if work is kind of helps you to de-stress and feel normal, I could see how that could maybe help you. Whereas if you have too much time on your hands, you may be like, too much time to get in your thoughts, right? And I think another thing worth mentioning, that's you. Yeah. I think another thing worth mentioning is especially on peak week, if you are gonna, maybe take off a little bit of time for work and just have a little bit more time in general, don't find yourself like scrolling on social media and being hyper focused on who's going to be at your show or looking at other competitors. Cause I would say you are the most vulnerable during that week, just because you're so lean, you're probably just got done pushing, for that depletion part of peak week. And the worst thing you can do is try to look at other competitors who are going to be at your show. Like there is literally nothing good that will come from that. And also, we've talked about this before on this podcast, but Instagram absolutely means nothing. You never know how somebody looks on Instagram. It could be a complete 180 with how they look by the time they get on stage. So, if you need to maybe take a little bit of like a social media break or just mute extra people on your week leading up to show day, I think that's really important because that's it's a very easy time to get into your head that week out from your show, especially.
And look, guys, nothing good is going to come of that. Please go to NPC News online and check out the photos for sure. But don't go look at the show photos from the year before and think, oh, this is the caliber of people that showed up. If you want to go look at the numbers, those will be somewhat accurate, right? Typically shows bring about the same number of competitors, some higher than lower, right? But you can have a general idea. If you go look at the last 5 years of the show and there's about, 25 bikini competitors each one of those years, you can probably assume it's going to be somewhere around that. But looking at the people that show up, there's no reason to do that. None. Absolutely zero. And I don't understand why people, because there's a few reasons for that. Those people ain't going to show up again. You don't know if they're going to show up. They may never competed before. And there could be somebody down the street that their first time competing, but they've worked out for 20 years and already peeled to the bone, walk in and blow everyone away. It doesn't matter with that. Not to mention, stage shots do not equal reality at all. At all. I have seen stage shots from people I'm like, whoa, they look way better in person than that. Right.
Yeah.
That happens a lot of times. So it doesn't do any good, people. Like there's literally no point in doing it.
No, it's literally it's self-induced stress. It really is. And here's another one too. I think I'm curious to hear your guys' insight on this because I think everybody is very different with this. But when it comes to kind of preparing for your show day, especially if you're doing a show that is maybe somewhat local and you have lots of friends and family around, I think it's important to consider that like there are probably going to be a lot of people that may want to come to your show and watch you and support you, but I think it's also important to realize like if that stresses you out, because I know it does stress some people out. Like for me, if I have a ton of people coming to the show, sitting in the crowd watching me, that is going to stress me out so much, right? And so I think that's something to consider too, is like don't be afraid to, if you have friends and family that want to come and support you, but that really stresses you out, don't be afraid to have that conversation with them, say, hey, I really appreciate you wanting to come, but I just kind of want to, stay very low key for my first show. So don't be afraid to have those boundaries there, because I feel like people can go either way with that too. Some people really love a good crowd, good support system, but other people that overwhelms them, it kind of
Be
stresses them out.
a diva. Tell the people what your schedule is and let them know
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, I'm here for you, but during these times I got to focus on me. So yeah, it's very, and there's another big thing that happens with competitors saying, don't be surprised if a lot of people don't show up. A lot of people are going to say, hey, yeah, I'm coming to your show. You're going to really find out who really cares about you, because they're all going to be like, oh, I didn't know it was on a Saturday. Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Well, another thing that I think is very important to talk about when it comes to planning or preparing for your show, and this is not show day, but I think we're all going to agree that it's important before your show day to already be thinking about that post-show plan, right? Whether you are ending your season and it's the last show of the season and you're going into your reverse diet, or whether it's you have other shows on the horizon, I think it is important to have an idea of what you're going to do post show. And that's a conversation you need to have with your coach leading up to your show day. And I would even say probably before peak week, just so you have an idea of, okay, what can I expect? Like, have that conversation with your coach so you know what to expect Saturday night, post show, Sunday. And then, you don't have too much time after the show to potentially fall off the rails.
No, absolutely. That's a conversation to have, and to make sure that you are set up for success after, right? And again, this is a big thing for newer competitors, especially first and second time competitors with that. If you've done this a few times, you're gonna learn. And also go ahead and prepare yourself on how hard the post show, if you're not going to be competing again, how hard the reverse is going to be after your first show. It doesn't matter if you're conditioned or not conditioned. Let's be honest with that. It doesn't. So it's hard because you don't have that carrot on the end of the stick making you stick to it, and things can get out of control quickly. And when they do, you can't unring that bell. You can't, unfortunately. And it can it could delay the next time you get on stage by 6-8 months. How you handle reverse?
Oh yeah. If you do too much damage, it might take you a year. And there's something I notice with certain competitors is, like, I call it binge belly, or if you store fat very rapidly by either binging or post show, just extravaganza, it'll show in your core, but maybe not in your limbs. And so you might even get back down to your previous stage weight, but you'll just look squidgy in the midsection, and it doesn't come off. It just doesn't come off. And so it takes time to reverse.
It's like that visceral fat that just builds up in there from the
It
binging
just,
with it.
for whatever reason, it's, I did it. It happened to me. I thought my season was over. I acted like it for 2 weeks. And then a friend of mine was like, please do the show with me. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And I got back down to my stage weight. Took me a couple weeks, but I remember looking at stage pictures, and from the back, I looked great. I still had striated glutes, but from the front, my abs were gone. And I'm like, what was this? And I talked to a few other coaches at the time, because I wasn't coaching when it happened to me. And they're like, yeah, this is what happens when you basically just go overboard for a couple days or a week and try to pull it back in. It's like, because it's so central to the digestive system, I think it kind of leaks into that layer there, and the fat cells just over absorb, and they don't come off. It just doesn't come off. You can't get that crisp, like that crisp ab core look back again.
Well, and not to mention, it throws off your digestion for so long too. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when my digestion is just like bleh, and it's so off, like it wreaks havoc on just how I feel, my mood. Like I don't usually want to go to the gym and lift when I'm like my digestion is out of whack. So there's that standpoint as well. That's just uncomfortable to have to sit with and live with.
So much happens in your gut. I know we bash on like gut experts and stuff, but if your digestion is messed up, it impacts a lot. And another thing too, it depends on the foods that you eat, right? Like if you overeat on tons of clean food to get that full feeling, you could typically be fine, again, dieting back down. But if you have a bunch of processed garbage that you're eating, that stuff sits in your gut for a long time, people. There's tons of studies about that, about how long these like heavily processed foods sit in your gut, how they don't break down, and how time after time they will build up in your system. So be careful. I'm not saying like if you eat a little bit here and there or a little bit here and there, that's going to do that. It's not. You're fine. But if post show you eat 20 donuts each night and 6 boxes of Pop-Tarts, I'd be guilty of that part of it, then it's not going to go well for you. It's not. It's not. So
Well, let's get
be
back to
careful.
the pre-show stuff that we can plan for, because I had a couple things that I was thinking that I always suggest to my competitors to do going into a show to like just be safe. One would be make sure you have 2 suits, make sure you have
Yeah,
a backup.
I would agree with that.
Black sheets, make sure you have a set of dark sheets to sleep on. If you're getting a hotel room, you cannot sleep on their bedding, you will ruin it. So, and even if you're wearing pajamas, it'll bleed through the pajamas. Plus your feet and hands are exposed. So yeah. And I'll give you a little tip. Protan is water soluble. So if you get something on the sheets, put it in the bathtub and soak it. It'll come right out. And you can just put the sheets on the floor, and the maids will be like, why are the sheets on the floor? But at least they won't be stained. You won't risk that. Same with towels, those white towels. If you use and you wipe off the Protan on them, if you just put them in the sink and let them soak, the Protan will come off completely. And that also helps the promoters, because sometimes these hotels will not let promoters come back if they have too much damage.
That's a great point. Yeah. Yeah. And kind of playing off of the whole suit thing you mentioned about the backup suit, if you have one, I would just generally recommend, if like you should, I would say getting your suit around like that 8-week out mark is usually a good kind of time to get it. You can always, when you order your suit, it'll always ask for like your anticipated weight loss. So that's how it will be sized to fit you on stage. But just ordering it early is nice, because you can get it, and if anything's wrong, you have ample time to send it back for alterations. It's just not stressful. So that's generally when I recommend ordering a suit as well.
Not yet. I always bring, granted, mine's different than females, right? Because those suits can get expensive on things. I always carry extra pair of board shorts with me, and I can't tell you how many friends I've met at shows because I let them use my shorts, my extra pair of shorts.
Oh
on
yeah,
there.
yeah. I've had girls have to borrow a suit because they only had one suit and it broke, and then another girl's like, "Hey, you can borrow mine," and so I'm like, "Thank goodness." But yeah, so most people just and here's another tip: if you're flying to the show, put your bikini suit in your carry-on. Do
Yes.
not put it in a bag and risk it getting lost.
Yes,
Yes.
and your heels. Yeah, all of
Yeah.
like those show day essentials, put them in your carry-on. That's a great point. And I would even say, because I know, like, yes, suits can be very expensive, and especially if you're newer, you don't probably have multiple suits. So you can always also get like a little mini sewing kit and bring it back with you backstage, because if something, snaps, like let's say it's a connector, that's something that you can, quickly, well, I say quickly, but you can sew back. So you can bring like a mini sewing kit. But I would even say with posing heels, have an extra set of posing heels as well, because you never know what can happen with those. So bring those backstage. And also on the topic of posing, I think this is something else we can talk briefly about when it comes to preparing for your show day, when it comes to posing. Because I think this is something I personally say you should start practicing even before you're in prep. But I'm curious what your guys' take is on like posing, and how you like to kind of get on top of your girls to practice this before stage.
Careful how you word things, Lexi. We're not getting on top of our girls.
Oh my gosh. So,
That's not
okay.
the kind of coaches we are, Lexi. You know that.
No.
Jokes aside. So I think of posing as a skill.
Mhm.
And if you practice it wrong, you cannot correct it in a matter of days. So hire a coach in the off season. Just go through the session, get the basics down way in advance, so your muscle memory is good. because you can make minor adjustments going into a show. You cannot make major adjustments. You are going to crack under pressure. You're going to resort to what you were doing wrong the whole time, pulling the arm back, twisting too far. Those are muscle memory. Like it's, you know, it's like learning how to do a skill in the gym and you learn how to do it wrong. That's just the way your brain connects the dots from going forward. So get that posing coach. And then I would say, you know, 6-8 weeks out from the show, have a follow-up session just to fine tune those things. And then, you know, listen, depends how much of a pro you are. You know, we can talk about girls that pose every day with their camera, watch it back, do it again, watch it back. Okay, cool. They go on to the next day, right? So the one thing I know about Daraja is that when she does posing sessions with her clients, and she's not limited to Pro Physique, guys. If you're not a Pro Physique client, doesn't matter. Daraja will pose anybody, but she also gives instructions on how to practice, right? How many times a day, how many times a week. There's such a thing as over practicing. You can pose too much. You can actually create some injuries. You can create some imbalances. So there's a method to posing properly, but I always say get a session really early so you're practicing, because every day you're going to just do it in the mirror, right? Or do it on your update pictures. I correct people in updates. I'm saying, hey, your back foot is in the wrong direction. No, you're leaning too far forward in your back pose. And that's because I want them doing it properly so that when we go into the show, if we make small adjustments, it's not a big deal.
And also, too, a thing to think about, especially again for newer competitors here, is start working with somebody early, because your progress pictures will change a lot of things too. I can't tell you how many girls I looked at, and I make them take pictures in different poses so I can see their structure, not just in their front pose or their back pose. So I do one in the front, one to the side, so I can actually see their glute development, so I can actually see their shoulder structure. I can see how wide their clavicles are and what they look like. And then when they get in the pose, I could be like, why am I seeing zero glute here when you have mounds of glutes? Or I have one competitor that's literally as wide as a house up top, crazy wide clavicles. She would get in her front pose and look like she didn't have any shoulder width. So if I just would have seen those pictures of her in that front pose, I would have thought, oh my gosh, how are we even going to do anything with this? Like, her structure is not there. But that's not the case. It was literally just her posing. So if you're newer at this, learn the basics of it, and it will help drastically in the ability. It'll help the coach drastically in their ability to be the best coach for you.
Absolutely. I always, like with my first time competitors, I always recommend them getting like a posing session as soon as possible, at least to just establish like their front pose and their back pose, because it's crazy as a coach when you see a girl that you've just been seeing, you know, standing straight towards the camera, relaxed, and then when you see her hit that front pose for the first time, it can be really cool to see how the structure looks. It just looks so drastically different compared to if they're just, you know, standing straight on towards the camera. So it's really helpful for us coaches to see our girls in their proper poses, just so we can do our job, you know, more efficiently. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you guys can think of as far as like just little odds and ends preparing for show day? I feel like we touched on the majority of things.
Yeah, I mean, just depends on, you know, your coach. I send my peak week plans out about 8 or 9 days out. And that includes a lot of the information, like, you know, when to do certain things, but a lot of it's going to be specific to the athlete. I think, you know, me personally, I like to train with my athletes the day before the show and pose with them. This is not a training session that's going to be, you know, talked about in the archives of the history of bodybuilding by any means. It's just a light little circuit to just elicit, okay, how full are we? How tight are we? So, you know, the last couple days, I think for me, it's about keeping people in a routine. I don't like when, you know, too many variables completely shift. I've had some people tell me like, oh yeah, my coach doesn't let me train for 2 days. I'm not allowed to do any cardio. I'm like, well, you know, I agree with tapering it, but you know, your digestive system, your mental well-being, it's all based on what you've seen all prep. And if you change all these variables, so like, you know, I like to keep the routine pretty steady. I even have some girls go do a light circuit the morning of the show if they just feel better after they lift. There's no rules. No one, when you get on stage, no one asks you what you did that day, how much cardio you did yesterday. There's none of those. So it really just, whatever makes you feel the best the moment you walk out on that stage, do it. So minimize stress, plan ahead as much as possible. And whatever you got to do to make that happen, that's the best thing you can do. The more type A you are, the more, by the book you need to be.
I recommend too having your list of everything that you need at least before peak week. And if you can pack the vast majority of that thing up and put it in a suitcase aside, go ahead and do that. Depending on how lean you are, things you can be pretty tired on peak week. No matter how the carb up is, no matter anything is, if you are peeled to the bone, then your brain is not always going to be there. And making sure that you have everything in order gets rid of a bunch of the garbage in your head.
Oh, I
Yes.
got a good one. Order the video. The new thing now with Gyoko and PCS, and these guys are doing amazing video work. This is something that I really wish was around when I competed. The video I got of you, Evan, the one I shot of you versus the one that we got, the professional one. Oh my goodness. Listen, you're dieting for weeks, months, training for years. That video that they're doing now, these it captures the physique almost like you're there in person, maybe even just as like it's crazy.
Oh, I see
It's
those
awesome.
Gyoko videos of like I'm just blown away by the quality. Like you are
Yeah.
right, it's literally like you are right there in person, if not even better. They're incredible.
Yeah. So that is,
It's great for the sport, and that's as
and
close as you're going to see for being in real time.
listen, long gone are the days where like the pictures of stage were like from the little Kodak spin cameras that I got at my first show. If you see a photographer there that does good work, get the pictures, because you might be like, oh, that's $200. I don't know if I want to spend that. In 6 months, when you look back and you realize you got nothing from that show but the photos that are online, you're going to be like, I would happily pay $200 to go back and get that. I promise you that will serve you for the rest of your life, especially if you're in the fitness business. Goodness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Any last minute things you guys can think of? We hit most of them.
I mean, little things for me. I always tell my athletes, hey, if you're backstage and you see somebody that needs some help, offer some help. Make friends. A lot of these people come in from all areas. They don't necessarily have a coach. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. Everyone's kind of intimidated backstage. Chat people up. If they're cold and standoffish, yeah, okay, move on. If they're chatty, maybe you make a friend for the day, and before you know it, you have a new BFF. But we're all the same kind of crazy at these shows, and you don't realize that these are the people that actually get you the most. And it can just really make the show day experience better. And be a narcissist. Hey, could you take a picture for me? Hey, can I find some good light? Hey, everyone's going to let me take a picture of you. I'll take a picture. Like as much as I try to be at every show, I'm not at every show. And I tell my athletes to really soak up that experience. And just
Don't be
enjoy
afraid to
the
have,
show day.
sorry, don't be afraid to ask people to take different pictures too. Like if they take a picture and it's not good, or they shoot directly. And here's the thing too, for people is if you are getting pictures taken, stand opposite the way of the direct light. Don't take a picture standing in front of a window. Have the photographer stand with their back to the window and take the picture of you, or else you're just going to get a silhouette of yourself and be upset about it.
Well, you know what the
Don't feel
best
bad.
pictures I've seen lately is when the show is over, because you're going to stay for feedback. We haven't brought that up, but that's a good one. Jump up on the stage and take some pictures. That's the best lighting. You can literally have your friends and family get up on the stage. Just ask the promoter. They don't mind. It's promoting their product. If they let you, if you're still there, get up on stage and snap some pictures. You got the stage lights, you got the backdrop. It looks great. I did that this weekend at the Klash, and I saw a bunch of people doing it. And it's, so yeah, don't be afraid to get those pictures. I know at Tampa last year, me and Evan kind of swept the show with bikini. Not kind of, we did. Man, I wasn't leaving that stage. We were there for 30 minutes, Evan, taking pictures with the girls. We were in there. Yeah. But guess what? Those are things that you're never going to get back that moment. And if as soon as they go go change and take their makeup off, and the moment's gone. You gotta, soak it up while you can.
Yep. Absolutely. Because and here's the thing too, when it comes to photo, yeah, and of course, stay and get feedback. That's incredibly important. Delay your dinner, do what you need to do. Just stay and get feedback. If you want to be good at this sport, and if you care, if it's a bucket list item, who cares? But if you want to truly be good at this sport, please stay and get feedback.
So when you go, because Evan said, go to the meeting in the morning, ask them if you're allowed to stay after. It depends on the size of the show. You know, last year, Battle of Texas, you know, my girl didn't get off stage till 1 a.m. I said, go home. I'll email the judge next week. I'm not trying to keep that judge there till 3 a.m. But Klash this weekend, we were done by 7:30. Every single head judge stayed right there by the stage. And there was maybe 5 competitors there from the NPC show. All the pros had gotten their feedback already, but I was shocked. You know, because I tend to like try to get up there quickly and get in line. There was 4 competitors there. And I was like, where is, you've literally got the head judge from the Olympia here. Stay for 30 more minutes. Get your feedback. It'll be 8 o'clock. You'll be out to dinner. I was shocked.
Yeah. Wow.
Stay. That's it.
On that note, get your feedback.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, just enjoy the experience, because the next thing you know, it's going to be Sunday morning and you're going to be like, wow, that went fast. The show goes fast.
Oh, yes, it does. Yeah.
Yep. So, all right, guys. Well, hopefully that helps everybody out there thinking about competing or that's in prep. I'm actually headed to London tomorrow.
I saw that. No big deal. Just headed to the UK. How long are you going to be there for?
So me and Steven land on Thursday morning and we leave on Monday morning. So we're there for 4 days. There is a One Bro Pro show. The list is out. It's pretty small. It's about 12 competitors. Maybe 3 former Olympians. I don't know all the European competitors. I recognized a couple names, but Ottavia's, you know, obviously one of the front runners at that show. Phoebe decided not to do it. I thought she was going to be.
She's actually taking the rest of the year off, I heard.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so, well, and Christy, who I had, and she placed 6th at the Clash. We're taking a couple weeks off to come back undeniable. We were considering jumping in, but you know, they want her leaner. So I thought maybe Phoebe was going to say, oh, she's going to take a little time off to fine tune, but she's taking the whole year off. She's, you know, you know what? I respect that. You know, like,
I really
absolutely.
do. I watched she made a YouTube video about it, but I think she just, you know, she's identified that she's, I think, feeling a little like, I don't want to say burnt out, but she's been in prep for a long time now. So I think it's going to be good for her to just take the year off. And
people don't realize, because they see the girls pop up like they're, oh, she did this show. But if you take a step back and look at, there are girls that have not stopped competing for 2 or 3 years straight every 3 months. And there is a price to pay for that. And so, you know, this is the great thing for Phoebe, is that she's got the muscle. She's got all the things. She's not going to get forgotten. She's been top 10 at the Olympia. Phoebe's name isn't going anywhere. She takes the time off and comes back. She's going to have that wow factor. And that's kind of the plan I have with Daraja. You know, Daraja said, you know, she was considering taking this whole year off and then made the decision. And guess what? This is the best off season she's ever had. Like, she is staying in such a good place mentally, physically, and we're not touching a prep for the year. So I think, you know, I looked at her schedule since we've been coaching together over 6 years. It was around the clock, because, you know, when you're climbing that ladder, there's a lot of pressure to kind of keep up with that. So I'm excited for Phoebe to take that time off. And what I'm hoping happens is some more girls kind of follow suit. I was happy to, you know, I got to spend a lot of time with Laura Lee. We went out to dinner after the show. She's not doing a show till the Olympia, which got me excited, because last year I felt like she pushed and pushed and pushed and then took a little break. And then I don't think she had time to get back. This year, I think she's going to be in a really good spot. So, yeah, I'm hoping, you know, everyone's different, but for the most part, a little bit of recovery is going to lead to a much better result.
Absolutely. And if we got to plan our trip when you get back, Paul. I don't know if we want to talk about that, but we'll plan that when we get back.
Yeah, well, we're doing a seminar in Texas at the Texas Pro. Jessica's been messaging me, so that's another one. So we got lots going on. All right. Hope you guys are having a good day. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and let us know if you need any help with your coaching.
Bye, guys.
All right, guys.
Have a good one,
Talk to
guys.
you soon.